in the glittering underbelly of New York City, where skyscrapers pierce the heavens like arrogant fingers and the streets below pulse with the desperate rhythm of forgotten souls, Alexander Voss reigned as a ghost in his own empire. Paralyzed from the waist down after a tragic accident that claimed his mobility and shattered his spirit, the billionaire tech mogul had everything money could buy, except the one thing he craved: a cure. His days were a monotonous parade of sterile boardrooms and echoing penthouses, his nights haunted by the phantom pain of what once was. But fate, that capricious architect, was about to weave an unexpected thread into his unraveling tapestry. It was a stormy evening in late autumn when Alexander's sleek black limousine crawled through the rain-slicked alleys of the Lower East Side. He was en route to a gala, his mind adrift in blueprints for neural implants that promised miracles yet delivered only disappointments. That's when he saw her, a small, drenched figure huddled beneath a crumbling awning, clutching a tattered backpack like it was her only anchor in the world. She couldn't be more than 12, her wide eyes reflecting the lightning flashes overhead, her clothes threadbare and soaked through, an orphan, abandoned by the system, scavenging for scraps in the shadows. Something stirred in Alexander, a flicker of empathy long buried under layers of cynicism. He ordered his driver to stop, the car's door hissing open like a portal to another life. "Get in," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. The girl hesitated, her gaze darting like a cornered animal, but the relentless downpour and the gnawing hunger in her belly won out. She slid into the warmth of the leather seats, dripping water onto the pristine interior, unaware that this act of kindness would ignite a chain of events neither could foresee. Her name was Alara, she whispered, as the car glided away from the curb. No last name, no family, just a string of foster homes that spat her out like yesterday's news. Alexander, intrigued by her quiet resilience, took her to his sprawling mansion on the Upper East Side, where butlers and maids stared in disbelief as he instructed them to prepare a room. Just for tonight, he told himself, but deep down he knew it was more. In Alara, he saw a reflection of his own isolation, a child fighting battles no one should face alone. As days turned to weeks, Alara blossomed under the roof of luxury. Tutors arrived to fill the gaps in her education. Chefs conjured meals that made her eyes widen in wonder. And for the first time, she slept without the fear of eviction or empty stomachs. Alexander watched from his wheelchair, a silent guardian, finding solace in her laughter that echoed through halls long silent. But Alara harbored secrets of her own, visions that came unbidden, whispers from a past she couldn't remember, an uncanny ability to sense the pain in others. Little did Alexander know, as he confided in her about his paralysis during late-night conversations by the fireplace, that the orphan he had saved carried within it the key to unlocking his prison of flesh and bone. One evening, as Alexander pored over medical scans in his private lab, Alara wandered in, her bare feet silent on the cold tile. She traced her fingers over the holographic displays, her brow furrowing in concentration. "I see it," she murmured, her voice distant, as if channeling something beyond herself. "The break isn't just here," she pointed to the spine on the screen. "It's tangled with something else, something in your mind." Alexander froze, his heart pounding. How could she know? The scans were classified, the details of his injury a closely guarded secret. But before he could press her, a sharp pain lanced through his legs, a sensation he hadn't felt in years. Alara's eyes glazed over, her small hand reaching out as if to pull invisible strings. What unfolded next would challenge everything Alexander believed about science, destiny, and the hidden potentials lurking in the human soul. As Alara's abilities began to surface, drawing the attention of shadowy figures from her forgotten past, the billionaire found himself not just protecting a child, but unraveling a mystery that could either restore his life or destroy them both. Alexander recoiled his chair, the holographic display flickering as if responding to the sudden jolt in the room. The pain in his legs ebbed away as quickly as it had come, leaving only a tingling warmth, like blood rushing back into limbs long asleep. Alara swayed, her small frame trembling, and he lunged forward to catch her before she crumpled to the floor. Her skin was fever-hot against his palms, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "Alara," he whispered urgently. Wheeling backward to lower her onto the plush examination couch he kept in the lab for his own endless tests. "Look at me." What did you just do? Her eyelids fluttered open. The usual stormy gray now shot through a flecks of gold that hadn't been there before. I don't know, she murmured, voice fragile. It hurt you, and I wanted to stop. I reached inside the picture in my head, and I pulled on the knot. That's all. The knot. Alexander's mind raced. For years, neurologists had described a lesion in his spinal cord as a clean severance. Neuron severed, signals forever blocked. But the most experimental scans, the ones he'd paid millions to keep off any official record, hinted at something stranger. Microscopic crystalline deposits clustered around the injury site, interfering with every attempt at regeneration. No one could explain their origin. They defied every known pathology. The doctors called them anomalous inclusions. Alexander had begun to think of them as his curse. And this child, the street waif he'd plucked from the rain, had just seen them without ever looking at the raw data. He activated the privacy shutters. The lab's floor-to-ceiling windows darkened until the city lights vanished. Then he pulled up the deepest layer of his scans, the ones rendered in false color to highlight the crystals. Ilara's gaze fixed on them immediately. "They're singing," she said softly. Alexander's breath caught. Singing, a low hum, like bees trapped in glass. They're wrapped around the cord that carries your walking. She pressed her fingertips to her temples. They don't belong there. They're listening. A chill traced his spine. Listening. 4 or 5 years he'd poured his fortune into neural interfaces, into AI-driven prosthetics, into gene therapies, anything to bypass the damage. And all the while these crystalline structures had sat in his body, inert yet obstructive, as if waiting for something, or someone. He reached for her hand. "Ilara, have you ever done anything like this before? Healed someone? Seen things inside them?" She shook her head, then paused. "Maybe. When I was little, before the homes, there was a lady who took care of me for a while. She had headaches that made her cry. I used to hold her hand, and the crying would stop. She said I was her little miracle. Then one day men in suits came and took me away. They asked a lot of questions about my mother." "Your mother?" Alexander leaned closer. "You never mentioned her." "I don't remember her. Just flashes. A white room. Bright lights. People in masks saying, 'The resonance is stronger than projected.' Then nothing." Her voice cracked. "I thought it was a dream." Alexander's instincts, honed by decades of boardroom warfare and technological espionage, screamed that this was no coincidence. He'd save her by chance, or had he? The accident that paralyzed him happened the same night a clandestine research facility in upstate New York suffered a catastrophic fire. Officially, it was a failed biotech startup. Unofficially, whispers in the darkest venture circles spoke of a classified project involving human enhancement, quantum entanglement, and something called resonant children. He wheeled to his terminal and initiated a search through his private archives, layers of encrypted data he'd accumulated over years of quiet investigation into his own condition. Keywords: resonance, crystalline neural deposits, orphan relocation programs. The results coalesced with terrifying speed. Project Erebus, a black-budget initiative funded through shell companies, designed to engineer children with heightened bioresin abilities, capable of interfacing directly with anomalous crystalline matrices developed from extraterrestrial samples. The goal: perfect soldiers, instant healers, living conduits for technology no machine could control. The project had gone dark after an uncontrollable feedback event that destroyed the primary lab and scattered the surviving subjects into anonymous adoption pipelines. Ilara was one of them, and the crystals in Alexander's spine recovered from the same meteorite fall that seeded the original research. She wasn't just the answer to his paralysis. She was the reason it had resisted every cure. His hands trembled on the wheels of his chair. If the remnants of Project Erebus learned he had her, if they realized the missing subject had found the one adult host carrying their prize matrix, they would come for her, for both of them. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. The perimeter alarm, not the outer gates. Someone had breached the inner biometric layer of the mansion itself. Alexander killed the lights with a voice command. In the sudden darkness, Ilara's eyes glowed faintly, that same golden shimmer. "They're here," she whispered. The men from my dreams. They followed the song. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside the lab, measured professional multiple sets. The door security panel blinked red as someone overrode the lock sequence with terrifying efficiency. Alexander grabbed Alara's arm and wheeled toward the hidden panel at the back of the room, a false wall disguising an elevator to his subterranean safe suite. But before he could reach it, the door hissed open and 3 figures in matte black tactical gear stepped inside, visors reflecting the dim emergency strips. The lead operative raised a suppressed pistol fitted with a strange crystalline muzzle attachment that hummed in the same register Alara had described. "Mr. Voss," the man said, voice modulated. "Step away from subject Echo Lima Alpha Romeo Alpha. We're authorized to retrieve her by any means." Alexander positioned himself between them and the girl. "You're on private property. Leave now, or every security feed in this house uploads to the authorities in 60 seconds. The operative tilted his head. "Authorities who buried Erebus deeper than Atlantis? Try again." Alara stepped forward, small fists clenched. "You left me to die in that fire," she said, her voice suddenly steady, carrying an authority no 12-year-old should possess. "You don't get to take me back." The crystalline attachment on the pistol flared brighter. The operative staggered as if struck, clutching his helmet. The other 2 raised their weapons, but too late. Alara swept her hand through the air, and every holographic display in the lab exploded in cascades of sparks. The overhead sprinklers burst to life, dousing the intruders in freezing water. Alexander seized the moment, slamming his palm against a hidden panel. The false wall irised open, revealing the elevator. He yanked Alara inside and hit the descent button. As the doors closed, he caught a final glimpse of the lead operative ripping off his cracked visor, eyes wide with something that looked disturbingly like fear. The elevator dropped 3 stories into the reinforced bunker Alexander had built not for natural disasters, but for the day his enemies came calling. Steel doors sealed above them with a resonant boom. Alara slumped against the wall, the golden light in her eyes fading to exhausted gray. "They'll find a way down," she said quietly. "The crystals in you. They're like a beacon now that I touched them." Alexander activated the bunker's defenses, electromagnetic pulse shutters, reinforced alloy plating, an independent air and power grid. Then he turned to her. "We're not running," he said. "Not yet. First, we understand exactly what you can do. Because if those crystals are listening, maybe we can make them obey instead." He wheeled to the compact medical bay in the corner, gesturing for her to lie on the scanning bed. Advanced equipment hummed to life. MRI, PET, and proprietary resonance imagers he designed himself. As the first scan began, Alara reached out and took his hand. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I," he replied. "But together we might be unstoppable." The display lit up with new data. Where before the crystals had appeared as inert blockages, now faint filament of energy pulsed between them and Alara's brain patterns, synchronizing in real time. A feedback loop, a living circuit. Alexander's legs twitched involuntarily, stronger this time. Sensation flooded upward, pins and needles evolving into genuine feeling. He gasped. Alara's eyes widened. "It's working. I can feel the song changing." But the triumph lasted only seconds. A deep vibration shuddered to the bunker as something massive began cutting through the upper seals. Red warning lights bathed the room. They were out of time. Alexander killed the scan and pulled up schematics of the mansion's substructure. There was one more escape route, an old service tunnel leading to a private dock on the Hudson, but it meant leaving most of his resources behind. He looked at Alara, this child who had wandered into his life like a storm and become its center. "We're going to run," he corrected himself, "but not hide. We find others like you. We learn the full scope of what they did. And then we end it." She nodded, squeezing his hand as the first sparks of plasma cutting rain from the ceiling above. They fled into the tunnel just as the bunker door buckled inward, voices echoing behind them, cold, determined, and already planning their next move. But for the first time in years, Alexander felt the ground beneath wheels that might soon carry weight again, and beside him walked a girl whose power was only beginning to awaken. The night swallowed them as they emerged onto the icy riverbank, a speedboat waiting in the darkness, engine idling. Alexander gunned the throttle, sending them skimming across black water toward the distant glow of New Jersey's industrial shore, where anonymous safe houses and encrypted networks awaited. Behind them, searchlights swept the mansion grounds, but the distance grew. For now, they were free. Illyria leaned against him, wind whipping her hair. "Where are we going?" "To find the truth," Alexander said, voice steady despite the chaos receding in their wake. "And maybe along the way, teach those crystals a new song." As the city skyline shrank to a jeweled horizon, the first real movement returned his toes, a promise of steps yet to come and battles yet to be fought. The speedboat sliced through the inky Hudson, spray stinging their faces as Manhattan's lights faded into a distant memory. Alexander throttled down only when they reached the shadowed docks of an abandoned industrial yard in Newark, where a black SUV waited exactly as his most trusted fixer had promised. No words were exchanged with the driver. Loyalty bought with fortunes, and favors needed no explanation. They transferred vehicles and vanished into the labyrinth of highways, heading north toward the Adirondacks, where Alexander owned a forgotten research outpost disguised as a hunting lodge. Hours blurred into dawn. Illyria slept fitfully against his shoulder, her dreams murmuring fragments of warnings, flashes of white rooms, masked faces, and a woman's voice calling her name. Alexander's legs throbbed with unfamiliar life, muscles awakening like dormant seeds after a long winter. By the time they arrived at the lodge, buried deep in snow-dusted pines, he could flex his toes deliberately, a miracle that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The facility was a relic from his early days, state-of-the-art when built, now upgraded in secret with off-grid quantum servers and a compact particle accelerator he'd salvaged from defunct projects. Here, no signals could be traced. Here they could breathe. Over the following weeks, an extraordinary partnership bloomed. Illyria, guided by instincts she could barely articulate, learned to harmonize with the crystalline matrix embedded in Alexander's spine. Sessions in the shielded chamber became rituals. She would place her palms on his bare back, eyes closing as golden filaments danced across her irises, and the hum would rise, a symphony only they could hear. Each time, the crystals realigned, neural pathways rebuilt themselves thread by thread. Pain flared, then subsided into waves of sensation returning. The brush of fabric on skin, the weight of gravity pulling at calves long ignored, the exquisite ache of muscles remembering their purpose. But it was more than healing. Illyria's abilities expanded in tandem. She began to perceive the world's hidden resonances, ley lines of energy threading through earth and flesh, echoes of ancient impacts that had seeded the planet with these extraterrestrial shards. Alexander's vast intellect complemented her raw gift. Together they mapped the Matrix's true nature. It wasn't merely obstructive. It was a bridge, a quantum interface designed not for destruction, but for transcendence. Project Erebus had sought weapons, but the architects, visionaries lost to history, had dreamed of evolution. Yet shadows lengthened. The pursuers adapted. Drones skirted the perimeter. Encrypted bursts probed their defenses. Alexander intercepted communications. A coalition reformed from Erebus's ashes, backed by nations and corporations hungry for the ultimate edge. They called the surviving resonant children the Chorus, and Illyria was the strongest voice, the one whose frequency could command any matrix bearer. One crystalline night, under a sky ablaze with auroras, the assault came. Black helicopters descended like raptors, ropes spilling elite operatives and exosuits augmented with crude crystal implants of their own. The lodge's automated turrets bought precious minutes, but the enemy breached the outer ring. Alexander, now able to stand with crutches, faced Illyria in the central chamber. "We can't run forever," he said, voice steady. "It's time to sing the song they fear." She understood. Tears glistened, but her chin lifted with unbreakable resolve. They linked hands over the accelerator's core, a device Alexander had reconfigured into a resonance amplifier. As alarms wailed and boots thundered down corridors, Illyria closed her eyes and reached inward, drawing every thread of power she possessed. The hum began low, building to a crescendo that shook the foundations. Golden light poured from her, channeling through Alexander's body, igniting the matrix in a blaze of pure harmony. Every crystal shard across the globe, dormant in meteorites, buried in vaults, implanted in forgotten subjects, resonated in unison. The attackers froze mid-stride, their crude implants overloading, suits locking as feedback loops rendered them helpless. But Alera went further. She broadcast not control, but choice. Across the world, hidden children like her awoke to their heritage. Laboratories trembled as equipment harmonized or shattered. Secure facilities lost power as energy redirected to healing rather than harm. The chorus rose, not as weapons, but as guardians. In the lodge, the final operatives breached the chamber doors only to drop their weapons. Faces slack with awe. One by one, they knelt, not in defeat, but surrendered to something greater. The lead commander, the same man from a mansion, removed his helmet, eyes reflecting the golden storm. "It's over," he whispered. "We were wrong." Alexander stepped forward, unaided for the first time in years, legs strong and sure, wrapping Alera in an embrace as the light faded. She sagged against him, exhausted but radiant, the golden flecks in her eyes now permanent stars. In the months that followed, the world transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The exposed remnants of Project Erebus crumbled under global scrutiny. The resonant children emerged from shadows, guided by Alera's beacon to safe havens where their gifts nurtured rather than exploited. Alexander liquidated portions of his empire to fund a new foundation, the Harmony Institute, dedicated to ethical exploration of human potential. He walked again, not just physically, but into a life rich with purpose. Fatherhood came naturally. Adoption papers bore both their names. Alera thrived, her laughter filling spaces once echoing with loneliness. Together they traveled, speaking at forums where scientists and mystics converge, demonstrating that science and wonder were not enemies but lovers long separated. Yet the greatest miracle unfolded on a quiet evening years later, atop a mountain overlooking a vast, starlit valley. Alexander and Alera, now a poised young woman, her power tempered by wisdom, stood hand in hand. She placed his palm on the subtle glow at her abdomen. "Feel it," she smiled through tears. The next voice in the chorus. Within her grew a child conceived not in laboratories, but in love, a bridge between the stars that had fallen and humanity rising to meet them. The matrix sang softly, a lullaby of infinite possibility. Alexander looked to the heavens, where auroras danced in eternal celebration, and whispered gratitude to the storm that had brought a drenched orphan to his door all those years ago. In saving her, he had been saved. In healing him, she had healed the world. And somewhere in the cosmic resonance, the universe itself hummed in approval, a magnificent symphony where broken billionaires and forgotten children became legends, proving that destiny's most beautiful threads are woven not by chance, but by hearts brave enough to reach through the rain. The song continued, endless and ever-growing, carrying hope on waves no shadow could silence. For in the end, love was the purest frequency, and together they had tuned the world to its melody.